Sarah Martinez stood outside the Naval Special Warfare Command building in Coronado, California, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the manila envelope containing her rejection letter. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine military compound, but the brightness felt mocking against the darkness clouding her thoughts. She had dreamed of becoming a Navy SEAL since she was 12 years old, watching her older brother Marcus return from his deployment with stories that ignited something fierce inside her chest. While other girls her age were playing with dolls, Sarah was practicing military drills in her backyard, timing herself on obstacle courses she built from whatever materials she could find. The letter inside the envelope was brief and clinical. After careful consideration of your application, we regret to inform you that you do not meet the current requirements for SEAL training. Candidacy. The words burned in her memory. As she walked slowly toward her beat-up Honda Civic in the parking lot, Sarah had spent 4 years in the regular Navy, excelling in every task assigned to her. She had scored in the top 5% on her physical fitness tests, earned commendations for her leadership during a rescue operation in the Mediterranean, and completed advanced combat training with honors. Her commanding officers consistently rated her performance as exceptional, yet none of that seemed to matter when it came to the elite Special Operations Unit. At 26, Sarah possessed the lean, muscular build of someone who treated physical fitness like a religion. Her dark eyes held an intensity that made people take notice, and her quiet confidence spoke volumes about her character. She rarely backed down from challenges, whether they came in the form of grueling training exercises or difficult personalities among her peers. The drive home to her small apartment in San Diego passed in a blur. Sarah replayed every moment of her application process, searching for what she might have done wrong. She had passed every preliminary test, exceeded the minimum requirements, and demonstrated unwavering commitment to serving her country. Yet something had fallen short in the eyes of the selection committee. Her apartment felt smaller than usual as she tossed the rejection letter onto her kitchen counter. The walls were decorated with military memorabilia, photos from her deployments, and certificates of achievement that suddenly felt meaningless. Sarah opened her laptop and began researching everything she could find about SEAL selection criteria, determination replacing the initial sting of disappointment. Hours passed as she read through forums, official publications, and news articles. The more she learned, the more apparent it became that very few women had even attempted to join the SEAL teams, and none had successfully completed the full training program. The realization hit her like a physical blow, but it also awakened something deeper than mere ambition. That evening, Sarah called her brother Marcus, who was stationed at a base in Virginia. His voice carried the same steady calm that had always anchored her during difficult times. When she explained what had happened, Marcus listened without interruption, letting her pour out her frustration and confusion. "You know what Dad always told us?" Marcus finally said. "Sometimes the path we think we want isn't the path we're meant to take, but that doesn't mean we stop walking." His words reminded Sarah of their father, a former Marine who had taught them both that setbacks were just setups for comebacks. After hanging up, Sarah made a decision that would change the trajectory of her entire life. If the Navy wouldn't give her the chance to prove herself as a SEAL, she would find another way to demonstrate the skills and dedication that made Special Operations personnel truly special. She would show them exactly what they had rejected, and she would do it in a way that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. The next morning brought a renewed sense of purpose. Sarah researched civilian shooting competitions, tactical training programs, and specialized schools that catered to military personnel and law enforcement. She discovered a world of competitive shooting that operated parallel to military special operations, where precision, mental toughness, and split-second decision-making were valued above all else. Sarah began mapping out a plan that would push her abilities to their absolute limits. She would seek out the best instructors, enter the most challenging competitions, and develop skills that would make even seasoned SEAL snipers take notice. The rejection letter that had crushed her dreams 24 hours earlier now served as fuel for a fire that burned brighter than ever before. As she prepared for bed that night, Sarah looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and made a promise. She would not let this setback define her. Instead, she would use it as the foundation for something extraordinary, something that would prove beyond any doubt that the Navy had made a serious mistake in rejecting her application. The journey ahead would be difficult, but Sarah Martinez had never been one to choose the easy path. 3 weeks after receiving her rejection letter, Sarah found herself driving through the dusty hills of Arizona toward Thunder Ridge Tactical Academy, a specialized training facility that catered to military personnel, law enforcement officers, and serious civilian shooters. The facility had a reputation for producing some of the most skilled marksmen in the country, and their waiting list typically stretched for months. Sarah had managed to secure a spot in their intensive precision shooting program after a phone conversation with the Academy's director, Colonel James Hawk Harrison, a retired Army Ranger who had served multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Something in Sarah's voice during that call had convinced him to make an exception to their usual scheduling constraints. The Academy sprawled across 300 acres of desert landscape, with multiple shooting ranges designed to simulate various combat scenarios. As Sarah parked her car near the main building, she could hear the distinctive crack of rifle fire echoing across the valley. The sound sent an unexpected thrill through her body, awakening instincts she hadn't realized were dormant. Colonel Harrison met her at the registration desk, his weathered face and steel-gray eyes immediately sizing her up in the way that only experienced military personnel could manage. He was shorter than Sarah had expected, but his presence filled the room with an authority that commanded instant respect. "You're the Navy petty officer who wants to shoot like a SEAL sniper," he said without preamble, his voice carrying just a hint of skepticism. "Tell me why I should waste my time on someone the Navy already decided wasn't good enough." The question stung, but Sarah had anticipated this type of challenge. She met his gaze directly and spoke with quiet conviction. "Because they didn't reject my abilities, Colonel. They rejected their assumptions about what those abilities could become. I'm here to prove that their assumptions were wrong." Harrison studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough. But understand this. My program isn't designed to make you feel better about yourself. It's designed to break you down and rebuild you into something better than you thought possible. Most people who start here don't finish. Are you prepared for that?" Sarah's response was immediate. "I'm not most people, sir." The first day of training began at dawn with a comprehensive assessment of Sarah's existing skills. She had always been a competent shooter during her Navy service, consistently scoring well on qualification tests, but Colonel Harrison's evaluation revealed just how much room for improvement existed. "You shoot like someone who learned from a textbook," he told her after watching her put 10 rounds into a man-sized target at 100 yards. "Technically correct but lacking instinct. In real combat situations, textbook shooting gets you killed." Over the following days, Harrison introduced Sarah to concepts that challenged everything she thought she knew about marksmanship. He taught her to read wind patterns by watching grass movement and feeling air pressure changes on her skin. He showed her how to calculate bullet drop and drift using environmental factors that most shooters never considered. The physical demands of the program were unlike anything Sarah had experienced in the regular Navy. Each day began with a 5-mile run through the desert, followed by strength training sessions designed to build the specific muscle groups required for sustained shooting positions. Afternoons were spent on the ranges where Sarah learned to shoot from uncomfortable positions for extended periods. But the mental challenges proved even more demanding than the physical ones. Harrison would create high-pressure scenarios where Sarah had to make split-second decisions while maintaining perfect shooting form. He would shout contradictory commands, create artificial time pressures, and introduce distractions designed to break her concentration. The difference between a good shooter and an elite shooter isn't physical ability, Harrison explained during one particularly grueling afternoon session. It's the ability to maintain absolute mental clarity when everything around you is chaos. Sarah struggled initially with these advanced techniques. Her first week at Thunder Ridge was marked by frustration and self-doubt, as she consistently failed to meet Harrison's exacting standards. There were moments when she questioned whether she truly possessed the capabilities needed to excel at this level of shooting. The breakthrough came during her second week when Harrison introduced long-range precision shooting. Standing at the 400-yard line, Sarah found herself in a zone she had never experienced before. The world seemed to slow down as she controlled her breathing, felt the wind against her face, and squeezed the trigger with perfect timing. The shot was perfect, striking the center of the target with a precision that surprised even Harrison. More importantly, Sarah had found something within herself that felt completely natural, as if she had been meant to do this all along. "Now we're getting somewhere," Harrison said, a rare smile crossing his weathered features. "You just discovered what you're really capable of when you stop trying so hard and start trusting your instincts." That evening, Sarah called her brother Marcus to share her progress. For the first time since receiving her SEAL rejection, she felt genuinely excited about her future possibilities. The path ahead was becoming clearer, even if she couldn't yet see exactly where it would lead. By her 4th week at Thunder Ridge Tactical Academy, Sarah had transformed from a competent military shooter into something approaching an artist with a rifle. Colonel Harrison noticed the change immediately, watching with growing interest as she consistently placed shots within fractions of an inch of her intended target points. The real test came when Harrison introduced Sarah to the Academy's most challenging course, the Urban Sniper Simulation. This complex training scenario required shooters to engage multiple targets from various distances and angles while navigating through a mock city environment built specifically for advanced tactical training. Sarah entered the simulation course at dawn, carrying her rifle and basic equipment through streets lined with concrete buildings designed to mirror real urban combat environments. The course included pop-up targets that appeared for mere seconds, requiring instant target acquisition and engagement from positions that would challenge even experienced snipers. What happened next surprised everyone watching, including Sarah herself. Moving through the course with fluid precision, she engaged 17 different targets over a 30-minute period, adapting her shooting position and technique for each unique challenge the simulation presented. Her accuracy was remarkable, but more impressive was her ability to make rapid tactical decisions while maintaining perfect shooting form. Colonel Harrison reviewed the results with barely concealed amazement. Sarah had achieved a perfect score on one of the most difficult courses the Academy offered, something that typically required months of specialized training to accomplish. Even more significantly, she had completed the course faster than their previous record holder, a former Marine Force reconnaissance sniper. "I've been training shooters for over 20 years, Harrison told Sarah as they reviewed her performance footage. "What you just did shouldn't be possible for someone with your level of formal training. You have something that can't be taught, an instinctive understanding of angles, wind, distance, and timing that takes most people years to develop." Sarah felt a mixture of pride and confusion at his assessment. She had always been a quick learner, but this level of rapid skill acquisition felt different from anything she had experienced before. During the urban simulation, she had found herself making calculations and adjustments that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than conscious thought. That evening, Harrison invited Sarah to join him for dinner at the Academy's small dining facility, where he shared stories from his military career and explained how he had transitioned from active duty to training others. More importantly, he began outlining opportunities that existed beyond traditional military service for someone with Sarah's emerging capabilities. "The civilian tactical community is much larger than most people realize," Harrison explained between bites of his simple meal. "There are competitions, training programs, and professional opportunities that rival anything the military offers. The question is whether you're interested in exploring those possibilities." Sarah listened intently as Harrison described precision shooting competitions that attracted participants from around the world, including current and former military snipers, law enforcement marksmen, and civilian enthusiasts who had dedicated their lives to perfecting their craft. These competitions tested skills that went far beyond basic marksmanship, requiring competitors to demonstrate tactical thinking, physical endurance, and mental toughness under extreme pressure. The conversation sparked something new in Sarah's mind. For the first time since her SEAL rejection, she began to see a path forward that didn't involve constantly measuring herself against military standards that might never accept her. Instead, she could compete in an arena where performance was the only thing that mattered, where gender and institutional politics had no bearing on success or failure. Harrison went on to explain that the most prestigious competition in the precision shooting world was the International Tactical Challenge held annually in Montana. The competition attracted the best shooters from military, law enforcement, and civilian backgrounds, with challenges designed to test every aspect of marksmanship and tactical decision-making. The current women's record holder at the International Tactical Challenge scored 12 consecutive Bullseyes on their long-range precision stage, Harrison mentioned casually, then paused to gauge Sarah's reaction. Based on what I've seen from you over the past month, I think you could do better than that. Sarah felt her pulse quicken at the suggestion. The idea of competing against the world's best shooters both terrified and thrilled her. It would mean months of additional training, significant financial investment, and the risk of public failure if she couldn't perform under pressure. But as she considered the possibility, Sarah realized that this was exactly the kind of challenge she had been seeking. The SEAL teams had rejected her application, but they couldn't prevent her from proving her capabilities in a different arena. If she could excel at the International Tactical Challenge, she would demonstrate skills that even special operations snipers would respect. Over the following days, Harrison began incorporating competition-specific training into Sarah's program. He taught her about the unique pressures of shooting while being observed and scored, the importance of consistent routine under stress, and strategies for maintaining focus during extended competitions. Sarah threw herself into this new phase of training with renewed determination. Every shot became practice for the competition she was now committed to entering. She studied videos of previous International Tactical Challenge events, analyzing the techniques used by top performers and identifying areas where she needed to improve. The transformation in Sarah's shooting was remarkable to witness. Where she had once been technically proficient, she was now becoming truly exceptional. Her groups at long range consistently measured less than an inch, and her speed in acquiring and engaging targets had improved dramatically. Most importantly, Sarah had found her purpose again. The rejection that had initially crushed her dreams was now serving as motivation for achieving something potentially even more significant than SEAL qualification. 6 months after leaving Thunder Ridge Tactical Academy, Sarah had established herself as a rising star in the competitive shooting community. She had won 3 regional competitions and placed in the top 5 at 2 major national events, consistently outperforming shooters with decades more experience. Her apartment in San Diego had been transformed into a dedicated training space. One bedroom served as a dry-fire practice room where Sarah spent hours each evening, perfecting her trigger control and breathing techniques. The living room walls were covered with ballistic charts, weather data printouts, and competition scorecards that tracked her steady improvement. The financial cost of pursuing competitive shooting at an elite level had been significant. Sarah had taken a part-time job at a local gun range to supplement her Navy income, working evenings and weekends to afford the specialized equipment, ammunition, and travel expenses required for serious competition. Her social life had virtually disappeared as every spare moment was devoted to training or competition preparation. But the sacrifices were beginning to pay off in ways Sarah had never anticipated. Her reputation in the shooting community was growing rapidly, and sponsors were starting to take notice of her consistent performance. More importantly, she had found a community of people who understood her dedication and shared her passion for precision shooting. The International Tactical Challenge was now just 8 weeks away, and Sarah's preparation had reached an intensity that bordered on obsession. She had studied every aspect of the competition format, memorized the scoring system, and analyzed performance data from previous years to identify the specific skills that separated champions from also-rans. Colonel Harrison remained her primary mentor, checking in regularly to review her progress and provide guidance on competition strategy. During one of their weekly phone calls, he shared information that made Sarah's heart race with anticipation and anxiety. "I've been talking to some contacts who have connections to the International Tactical Challenge," Harrison told her. "Word is spreading about your performances this season, and there's significant interest in seeing how you'll do at the big show. The pressure is going to be unlike anything you've experienced before." Harrison went on to explain that the competition's long-range precision stage had become legendary within the shooting community. Competitors were required to engage 15 targets at distances ranging from 600 to 1,200 yards under time pressure, with environmental conditions that changed throughout the shooting period. The current record for consecutive bullseyes on this stage stood at 12, held by Marcus Thompson, a former Army Delta Force sniper who had dominated precision shooting competitions for the past 5 years. Thompson's achievement was considered nearly impossible to surpass, given the extreme difficulty of maintaining perfect accuracy across such varied distances and conditions. Sarah had watched footage of Thompson's record-setting performance dozens of times, studying every aspect of his technique and decision-making process. She respected his abilities immensely, but she had also identified subtle areas where her own approach might offer advantages. Her training intensified during the final weeks before the competition. Sarah traveled to different ranges across the Southwest, practicing in various environmental conditions and elevations. She shot in desert heat, mountain cold, and coastal winds, learning to adapt her technique for every possible scenario she might encounter in Montana. The physical preparation was equally demanding. Sarah maintained a rigorous fitness routine designed to build the core strength and stability required for extended shooting sessions. She practiced holding shooting positions for hours at a time, training her body to remain perfectly still even when fatigue set in. But perhaps most importantly, Sarah worked extensively on her mental preparation. She studied sports psychology techniques used by Olympic athletes, learning to manage competition pressure and maintain focus during critical moments. She practiced visualization exercises where she imagined herself competing successfully at the International Tactical Challenge. 3 weeks before the competition, Sarah received unexpected news that added another layer of complexity to her situation. Through connections in the shooting community, word of her upcoming participation had reached her former commanding officers in the Navy. Several of them expressed interest in attending the competition to observe her performance. The prospect of being watched by Navy personnel who had been part of her SEAL application process created mixed emotions for Sarah. Part of her welcomed the opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities to people who had doubted them, but another part worried that their presence would add pressure she didn't need during such an important competition. Sarah discussed these concerns with her brother, Marcus, during one of their regular phone conversations. His advice, as always, was both practical and encouraging. "You've been preparing for this moment for over a year," Marcus reminded her. "Don't let other people's opinions change anything about your approach. You've earned your place at this competition through your own efforts. Trust in that and let your shooting do the talking." As the competition date approached, Sarah felt a familiar mixture of nervousness and excitement that reminded her of her Navy deployment preparations. But this time, the outcome would be entirely in her control. No committees would evaluate her worthiness based on policies or politics. Success or failure would depend solely on her ability to perform when it mattered most. The final week of preparation passed quickly as Sarah completed her last training sessions and prepared her equipment for travel to Montana. She had done everything possible to ready herself for the International Tactical Challenge. Now it was time to discover whether her dedication and natural abilities would be enough to achieve something truly extraordinary. The morning of the International Tactical Challenge dawned crisp and clear in the Montana mountains, with temperatures hovering near freezing and virtually no wind, conditions that serious shooters considered nearly perfect for precision work. Sarah arrived at Glacier Ridge Competition Complex before sunrise, wanting extra time to familiarize herself with the range layout and settle her nerves. The competition facility sprawled across a vast mountain valley, with shooting positions carved into natural ridgelines and target arrays positioned at distances that tested the limits of precision rifle capabilities. Over 400 competitors from around the world had gathered for the 3-day event, representing military units, law enforcement agencies, and civilian shooting organizations. Sarah felt the weight of expectation as she moved through the competitor registration process. Word of her rapid rise in the shooting community had spread throughout the competition circuit, and many participants were curious to see whether her regional successes would translate to performance at this elite level. Colonel Harrison had made the trip from Arizona to serve as Sarah's coach and spotter, bringing with him decades of experience in high-pressure shooting situations. His presence provided Sarah with a sense of calm confidence as they walked through the various stages of competition together. The format of the International Tactical Challenge was designed to test every aspect of tactical shooting proficiency. Competitors would face scenarios involving target identification, range estimation, environmental calculation, and precision shooting under strict time limits. Points were awarded based on accuracy, speed, and tactical decision-making throughout each stage. The competition's legendary long-range precision stage was scheduled for the final day, building anticipation throughout the first 2 days of preliminary events. Sarah performed solidly during these opening stages, placing consistently in the top 10 among all competitors and leading the women's division by a comfortable margin. But Sarah's focus remained fixed on the long-range stage, where Marcus Thompson's record of 12 consecutive bullseyes had stood unchallenged for 3 years. Thompson himself was competing again this year, adding another layer of drama to an already high-stakes situation. Sarah had studied Thompson from a distance during the first 2 days, observing his shooting routine and noting his methodical approach to each challenge. He was exactly what she had expected, technically perfect, mentally tough, and supremely confident in his abilities. At 42, he possessed the kind of seasoned composure that came from years of competition experience. The evening before the long-range stage, Sarah called her brother Marcus for their customary pre-competition conversation. His voice carried the same steady reassurance that had anchored her throughout this entire journey. "Remember why you started this," Marcus told her. "You're not shooting to prove anything to anyone else. You're shooting because this is who you are, and this is what you do better than almost anyone in the world." Sarah spent the night before the final stage in focused preparation, reviewing her equipment one last time, and running through mental rehearsals of her shooting sequence. She visualized herself moving through each target engagement, seeing perfect shots and managing the time pressure that would intensify throughout the stage. The morning of the long-range precision stage arrived with challenging weather conditions that would test every competitor's adaptability. A variable wind had developed overnight, creating conditions that would require constant adjustment and split-second decision-making. 150 competitors would attempt the long-range stage, with shooters called to the firing line in groups of 5, based on their overall standings from the preliminary stages. Sarah's performance during the first 2 days had earned her a spot in the final group, meaning she would shoot with the wind and light conditions fully developed. As the competition progressed throughout the day, word spread quickly when Thompson stepped to the firing line and immediately began demonstrating the form that had made him legendary. His first 12 shots were flawless, matching his existing record and putting him in position to extend it further. But his 13th shot, affected by a subtle wind shift he hadn't quite read correctly, missed the bullseye by mere fractions of an inch. The crowd's reaction was immediate and intense. Thompson's near miss meant that his record remained at 12 consecutive bullseyes, but more importantly, it demonstrated that even the most skilled shooters could be affected by the challenging conditions. When Sarah's group was finally called to the firing line, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Spectators, including several of her former Navy colleagues who had made the trip to Montana, gathered behind the shooting positions to witness what many expected to be an exceptional performance. Sarah approached her rifle with the same methodical routine she had developed over months of training. She checked her equipment, verified her shooting position, and began the mental process of reading environmental conditions that would affect each shot. The weight of expectation felt heavy, but Sarah had learned to channel that pressure into heightened focus. Colonel Harrison positioned himself as her spotter, ready to provide wind calls and tactical guidance throughout the shooting sequence. His presence gave Sarah an additional layer of confidence as she prepared to attempt something that no woman had ever accomplished at this level of competition. Sarah settled into her shooting position with the deliberate precision that had become second nature through months of intensive training. The rifle felt like an extension of her body as she adjusted the bipod legs and found her natural point of aim toward the first target, positioned at 600 yards. The silence around the firing line was absolute except for the gentle whisper of wind through the mountain grass. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the air movement against her face and mentally calculating the adjustments needed for her first shot. When she opened them again, her vision seemed sharper, her focus more intense than she had ever experienced. Colonel Harrison's voice came through her earpiece, calm and steady. "Wind is holding light and consistent from your 2 o'clock. First target looks good for a clean hold." Sarah's first shot broke cleanly, the rifle recoiling smoothly in her shoulder. Through her scope, she watched the bullet impact dead center in the target's bullseye. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd of observers. But Sarah had already shifted her focus to the second target at 700 yards. The rhythm she had developed during countless training sessions took over completely. Sarah moved through her shooting sequence with fluid efficiency, reading each target's distance and environmental conditions, making minute adjustments to her hold and delivering shots with machine-like consistency. Her second shot was perfect, then her third. The fourth target, positioned at 800 yards, required a more complex wind calculation due to terrain features that created swirling air currents. Sarah took an extra moment to read the conditions, then sent her bullet precisely to the target center. By her sixth consecutive bullseye, the atmosphere around the firing line had become electric. Spectators who had been casually watching other competitors were now focused entirely on Sarah's performance. Even seasoned shooting professionals were beginning to realize they were witnessing something extraordinary. Sarah was completely absorbed in her shooting process, unaware of the growing excitement around her. Each target presented unique challenges that required split-second decision-making and flawless execution. The distances were increasing with each engagement, and the wind conditions were becoming more complex as the afternoon sun heated the mountain slopes. Her seventh, eighth, and ninth shots continued the streak of perfect accuracy. The targets at 900, 1,000, and 1,100 yards each fell to precise hits that demonstrated not just marksmanship skill, but an almost supernatural ability to read environmental conditions and make instantaneous ballistic calculations. Marcus Thompson, watching from the sideline with a mixture of respect and amazement, knew better than anyone what Sarah was accomplishing. "She's in a zone I've never seen before," he commented to another competitor. "This isn't just good shooting. This is something special." Sarah's 10th shot matched Thompson's achievement from earlier in the day, but she showed no signs of the pressure that typically affected shooters attempting to break significant records. If anything, she seemed to be becoming more focused as the difficulty increased. The 11th target, positioned at the maximum distance of 1,200 yards, required Sarah to account for significant bullet drop, wind drift, and the thin mountain air that affected ballistic performance. She took several seconds to read the environmental conditions, made a slight adjustment to her scope, and delivered a shot that struck the target center with devastating accuracy. 11 consecutive bullseyes. Sarah had matched Thompson's existing record with 4 targets remaining in the sequence. The crowd's excitement was now palpable, with experienced shooters understanding they were witnessing a performance that might redefine what was possible in precision shooting competition. Colonel Harrison's voice remained steady in her earpiece, but she could hear the underlying excitement. "You're shooting lights out. Trust your instincts and keep doing exactly what you're doing." Sarah's 12th shot extended her streak beyond Thompson's record, making her the new record holder for consecutive bullseyes in international tactical challenge history. But she wasn't finished. 3 targets remained, and her focus was absolute. The 13th target fell to another perfect shot, then the 14th. As Sarah prepared for her final engagement, the silence around the firing line was so complete that her breathing seemed amplified in the mountain air. The 15th and final target represented the ultimate test of precision shooting under pressure. Sarah had already achieved something remarkable, but this final shot would determine whether she would set a record that might stand for years to come. She settled behind her rifle one last time, feeling the familiar comfort of the shooting position she had practiced thousands of times. The wind had shifted slightly, requiring a final adjustment that Sarah made instinctively. Her breathing slowed, her heartbeat steadied, and the world seemed to narrow to just her rifle, the target, and the space between them. The shot broke perfectly, the bullet's path visible through her scope as it arced across the mountain valley. For what seemed like an eternity, Sarah watched through her optic as the bullet struck the final target with the same devastating precision that had characterized every previous shot. 15 consecutive bullseyes. Sarah had not just broken the existing record, she had shattered it, achieving something that many experts had considered impossible under competition conditions. The explosion of cheers and applause from the crowd was immediate and overwhelming. Competitors who had been watching from nearby firing positions rushed to congratulate Sarah, while officials verified the remarkable achievement that would reshape competitive shooting history. As Sarah finally lifted her head from her rifle scope, she saw Colonel Harrison approaching with tears in his eyes and a smile that spoke of profound pride in her accomplishment. Behind him, she noticed several Navy officers who had made the trip to Montana, their expressions showing a mixture of amazement and what looked suspiciously like regret. Sarah Martinez had proven beyond any doubt that the Navy's rejection of her SEAL application had been their loss. not hers. She had found her own path to excellence and in doing so, had achieved something that would inspire others for years to come.